The gunshot echoed through the Chicago mansion as 8-year-old Matteo Ricci bolted upright in his bed, screaming. His small fists clutched the silk sheets, tears streaming down his face as the nightmare replayed again, his real parents' blood pooling on the marble floor 6 months ago. "Papa Stefano!" he cried into the darkness. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Stefano Ricci, the most feared man in Chicago's underworld, burst through the bedroom door. But faced with his adopted son's terror, the powerful Mafia boss felt utterly helpless. "The bad men came back," Matt sobbed. "They hurt Mama and Papa again." Stefano's jaw clenched. He could eliminate any threat, crush any enemy, but he couldn't fight the demons haunting this child's dreams. For 6 months, every night ended the same way. Matt's screams, his own helplessness. Then soft footsteps approached from the hallway. Paloma Flores, the new housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, her dark eyes filled with maternal concern. Without asking permission, she moved toward the trembling boy. "I'm right here, mijo," she whispered, sitting on the bed's edge. "You're safe now." For the first time in months, Matt's sobs began to quiet. Welcome to Passion and Power, where dangerous love stories come alive. Tonight's tale will break your heart and put it back together again. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to our growing family here. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in this emotional journey. 6 months earlier, Paloma Flores had never imagined her life would lead her to the doorstep of a Lake Forest mansion worth more than her entire neighborhood in Pilsen. Clutching her 7-year-old daughter Vicky's hand, she stared up at the imposing iron gates that seemed to stretch toward the gray Chicago sky. "Mommy, it looks like a castle," Vicky whispered in Spanish, her eyes wide with wonder. "Remember, mi amor, we speak English here," Paloma replied softly, adjusting the strap of her worn purse. Inside were her last $43, 3 job rejection letters, and a crumpled newspaper clipping for a housekeeper position that paid more than she'd ever dreamed possible. The intercom crackled to life. "State your business." "Paloma Flores, I'm here about the housekeeper position." The gate swung open with mechanical precision, revealing a winding driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges. As they walked toward the mansion, Paloma's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd cleaned houses before, but nothing like this. The building rose before them like something from a movie, all stone columns and gleaming windows that reflected the afternoon sun. A man in an expensive suit opened the front door before they could knock. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and intense brown eyes, he looked like he could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. But what struck Paloma most was the exhaustion etched into his handsome features, the way his white dress shirt hung open at the collar, as if he'd been running his hands through his hair. "Miss Flores?" His voice carried a slight Italian accent that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. "I'm Stefano Ricci." "Yes, sir. Thank you for seeing me." She squeezed Vicky's hand, hoping her daughter would remember to stay quiet. Stefano's gaze dropped to Vicky, and something shifted in his expression, a flash of pain so quick Paloma almost missed it. "You didn't mention a child in your application. I'm sorry, I can arrange childcare." "No." He stepped aside, gesturing them into a foyer that could have housed her entire apartment. "It's fine, come in." The interior took Paloma's breath away. Marble floors stretched in every direction, leading to a grand staircase that curved upward like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns on the walls, and fresh flowers, real ones, filled vases that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Wow," Vicky breathed, forgetting her instructions to stay quiet. Stefano's lips twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "You like it?" Vicky nodded enthusiastically. "It's like Beauty and the Beast." This time, Stefano did smile, and the transformation was startling. The hard lines around his eyes softened, making him look younger, less intimidating. "Well, I hope I'm not too much like the Beast." "The Beast was nice inside," Vicky said solemnly. "He just looked scary." Paloma felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Vicky, por favor." "It's all right." Stefano crouched down to Vicky's level, his expensive suit straining across his broad shoulders. "What's your name, little one?" "Victoria, But everyone calls me Vicky. I'm 7 3/4. 7 3/4 is a very important age, Stefano said seriously. That's almost 8. That's what I keep telling Mommy. As they talked, Paloma studied the man who might become her employer. Despite his obvious wealth and the aura of danger that seemed to follow him like cologne, he was gentle with Vicky. Patient. Nothing like the cold businessman she'd expected. Miss Flores. Stefano stood, his attention returning to her. Let me show you around. The tour was overwhelming. 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a library that could house a small college, a kitchen that belonged in a restaurant. Everything was immaculate, expensive, and somehow cold, despite its beauty. The position includes room and board, Stefano explained as they walked. There's a guest house out back where you and your daughter would stay. It has 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, everything you'd need. Paloma tried not to let her relief show. Room and board meant Vicky could stay in the same school district, meant they wouldn't have to move again. What exactly would my duties include? General housekeeping, some cooking, managing the household staff. He paused at the bottom of the grand staircase. And there's one more thing. The way he said it made Paloma's stomach tighten. Yes? I have a son, Matteo. He's 8. Stefano's jaw clenched. He's had some difficulties adjusting since coming to live with me. He might need extra attention. Is he your biological son? Adopted. The word came out clipped, final. His parents died 6 months ago. I'm all he has now. The pain in Stefano's voice was unmistakable, and Paloma felt her heart soften. Whatever this man did for a living, whatever secrets he carried, he clearly loved his son. I'm good with children, she said quietly. Vicky can be shy, but she's wonderful with other kids. Maybe they could be friends. Maybe. Stefano's expression was unreadable. The salary is $5,000 a month, plus room and board, health insurance included. Paloma's knees nearly buckled. $5,000 was more than she'd made in 3 months at her last job. That's very generous. I pay well for loyalty and discretion. His dark eyes held hers. I value my privacy, Ms. Flores. What happens in this house stays in this house. Can you handle that? There was something in his tone that suggested he wasn't just talking about typical household matters, but Paloma thought of her dwindling bank account, of Vicky's worn shoes, and the eviction notice she'd hidden in her purse. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Good. He pulled out his phone, checking the time on what looked like a very expensive watch. Can you start tomorrow? Tomorrow. Paloma blinked. Don't you want references? A background check? I've already had you investigated. At her shocked expression, he added, Standard procedure. You're clean, Miss Flores. Single mother. Worked 3 jobs to put yourself through community college. No criminal record, excellent work history. Until the restaurant closed last month. You need this job, and I need someone I can trust. The casual mention of an investigation should have terrified her. Instead, Paloma felt oddly reassured. This man took security seriously, which meant he'd protect Vicky too. Thank you, she said simply. We'll be here tomorrow morning. As they walked back toward the front door, a sound echoed from upstairs, a child's voice calling out in distress. Stefano's entire body tensed. Papa, Stefano, I can't find you. Excuse me, Stefano said tersely, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Paloma heard his voice, gentler now, reassuring. I'm here, Matt. I'm right here. Standing in that opulent foyer with her daughter's hand in hers, Paloma realized she was about to become part of something much more complicated than a simple housekeeping job. But as Vicky squeezed her fingers and whispered, I like him, Mummy, she knew they were exactly where they needed to be. Paloma's first week at the Ricci mansion passed in a blur of learning routines, memorizing preferences, and trying not to gawk at the casual luxury surrounding her. The guest house was bigger than any place she'd ever lived, 2 spacious bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a living room with windows overlooking the mansion's sprawling gardens. Vicky had adapted quickly, making friends with Maria, the warm-hearted cook who spoke Spanish and smuggled extra cookies into her lunchbox. But it was Matteo who captured most of Paloma's attention. The boy was beautiful in the way that heartbroken children often are, all dark eyes and solemn expressions, carrying himself with a gravity that no 8-year-old should possess. He was polite, well-behaved, and utterly terrified of being alone. "He follows Mr. Ricci everywhere," Maria confided on Paloma's third day as they prepared lunch in the massive kitchen. "Like a little shadow and at night." She shook her head sadly. "The poor baby screams." Paloma had heard those screams. They echoed through the mansion's halls like the cries of a wounded animal, always followed by Stefano's heavy footsteps and low, soothing voice. But the comfort never seemed to last long. She was folding laundry in the main house when she first encountered Matteo properly. He appeared in the doorway of the laundry room like a ghost, his dark hair tousled and his school uniform wrinkled. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hello, Matt." Paloma smiled, continuing to fold Stefano's expensive dress shirts. "How was school today?" "Okay." He stepped into the room, watching her work. "Are you the new housekeeper?" "I am. My name is Paloma." "That means dove in Spanish," Matt said matter-of-factly. "I'm learning Spanish at school. Well, I was, before. Before his parents died." The unspoken words hung in the air between them. "Your Spanish is very good," Paloma said gently. "Would you like to practice with me?" For the first time since she'd arrived, Matt's face lit up with something approaching enthusiasm. "Really? Papa Stefano says I should keep learning languages. He speaks Italian and English and some French. What about you? Do you speak Italian?" Matt's expression dimmed. "My real papa was teaching me, but now—" He shrugged, the gesture heartbreaking in its resignation. Paloma set down the shirt she was folding and crouched to Matt's eye level. "Would you like me to help you remember? I don't speak Italian, but we could practice together. Learn new words. You'd do that?" "Of course. Learning is always better with a friend." That afternoon, Paloma found herself sitting at the kitchen table with both Matt and Vicky, helping with homework while Maria prepared dinner. It felt natural, normal, like the family dinners she'd dreamed of, but never quite managed as a single mother working multiple jobs. "Vicky's really good at math," Matt observed, watching her daughter solve multiplication problems with ease. "She gets that from her father," Paloma said without thinking, then immediately regretted it when Matt's face fell. "I don't remember if my papa was good at math," he said quietly. Vicky looked up from her worksheet, her 7-year-old wisdom shining through. "That's okay, my papa isn't here either, isn't. But Mommy says the important stuff stays in your heart even when you can't remember it in your head." Matt considered this seriously. "Do you miss him? Your papa?" "Sometimes. But mostly I'm happy with just me and Mommy. We're a good team." "Papa Stefano and I are a team too," Matt said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. That evening, as Paloma was finishing her duties in the main house, she heard voices from Stefano's study. The door was slightly ajar and she couldn't help but overhear. "I don't know what else to do, Marcus." Stefano's voice was strained, exhausted. "He won't sleep alone. Every night it's the same thing. The screams, the nightmares. Maybe I'm not cut out for this." "Boss, you're doing everything you can," came Marcus's gravelly reply. "Kid's been through hell. It's going to take time." "Time I might not have. Antonio Moretti's been sniffing around looking for weaknesses. If he finds out about Matt—" "He won't. We've got security locked down tight." "Security can't protect him from his own mind, Marcus. I can kill any man who threatens him, but I can't fight his nightmares." Paloma's heart clenched at the raw pain in Stefano's voice. She'd seen him with Matt, patient, gentle, clearly devoted. But she'd also noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly when he thought no one was looking. That night, as she was putting Vicky to bed in their cozy guest house, the screaming started again. It was worse than usual, longer, more desperate. Paloma tucked Vicky in and kissed her forehead. "Stay in bed, mi amor. I'll be right back." She slipped out of the guest house and across the moonlit garden to the mansion. The front door was unlocked, probably for the security team, and she made her way quietly up the grand staircase, following the sound of distressed voices. Matt's bedroom door was open, warm light spilling into the hallway. Inside, Stefano sat on the edge of the bed, his white dress shirt wrinkled and partially unbuttoned, his dark hair disheveled. Matt was curled against him, sobbing into his chest. "They came back, Papa," Matt cried. "The men with guns. They hurt everyone again." "It was just a dream, figlio mio," Stefano murmured, his Italian accent thicker with emotion. "You're safe. I promise you're safe." But Matt continued to shake, his small body racked with sobs that seemed to come from his very soul. Stefano looked up and saw Paloma in the doorway, his dark eyes reflecting a helplessness that broke her heart. Without asking permission, Paloma stepped into the room. "Matt, sweetheart, it's Paloma." The boy looked up, his face streaked with tears. "Paloma?" "I'm right here, mijo," she said softly, sitting on the other side of the bed. "You're safe. Papa Stefano is here, and I'm here too." Something in her voice, perhaps the maternal warmth that Stefano, for all his love, couldn't provide, seemed to reach Matt. His sobs began to quiet. "Will you stay?" he whispered. Paloma glanced at Stefano, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Would you like me to sing you a song? I used to sing to Vicky when she had bad dreams." Matt nodded, settling back against his pillows, but keeping one small hand wrapped around Stefano's fingers. Paloma began to sing softly in Spanish, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her decades ago. Her voice was gentle, melodic, filling the room with warmth. As she sang, she watched Stefano's face. The hard lines around his eyes softened, and for a moment he looked younger, less burdened. When Matt's breathing finally evened out in sleep, Stefano carefully extracted his hand and motioned for Paloma to follow him into the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't know how you did that, but thank you." "He just needed to know he wasn't alone," Paloma replied. "Sometimes a mother's voice is the only thing that can chase away the monsters." Stefano's gaze intensified, and Paloma felt something shift between them, a recognition, an understanding that went beyond employer and employee. "You should get some rest," he said finally. "It's late." As Paloma walked back to the guest house, she couldn't shake the image of Stefano sitting helplessly beside Matt's bed, this powerful man brought to his knees by a child's tears. She was beginning to understand that the Ricci household held more secrets than she'd imagined, and that she was becoming far more invested in their well-being than was probably wise. 2 weeks into her employment, Paloma had established a routine that seemed to bring some stability to the Ricci household. She woke before dawn to prepare Stefano's coffee exactly how he liked it, strong, black, with just a hint of sugar. She made sure Matt's school lunch included the apple slices he preferred and the chocolate chip cookies Maria baked specially for him. She kept the mansion spotless while somehow making it feel more like a home. But it was the nights that had become her most important responsibility. Without any formal arrangement, Paloma had begun responding to Matt's nightmares. She would slip into the mansion whenever she heard his cries, appearing in his doorway like a guardian angel. Sometimes Stefano was already there, holding his son and looking lost. Other times Matt would wake alone and terrified, calling for his papa. "I'm right here, mijo," had become her nightly refrain, and somehow those simple words carried a power that surprised them all. This particular evening started differently. Paloma was in the kitchen with Maria preparing dinner, while Vicky and Matt worked on homework at the large island. The domestic scene felt natural, comfortable, until Marcus burst through the back door, his face grim. "Boss needs to see you," he said tersely to Paloma. "Now." The urgency in his voice sent ice through her veins. "Is everything all right? Just come." Paloma followed Marcus to Stefano's study, her heart hammering. She'd never been summoned like this before, and the security chief's expression suggested serious trouble. Stefano stood behind his massive desk, his white dress shirt open at the collar as usual, but his face was harder than she'd ever seen it. The elegant tattoo on the side of his neck seemed more pronounced in the harsh light, and his platinum Rolex caught the light as he gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit," he said, his voice cold. Paloma sat, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "Have I done something wrong?" "That depends." Stefano's dark eyes bore into hers. "What do you know about my business, Miss Flores?" The formal address stung. For weeks, He'd simply called her Paloma, and she'd grown used to the warmth in his voice when he said her name. "I know you value your privacy," she said carefully. "I don't ask questions about things that aren't my concern." Smart answer. He moved around the desk, perching on its edge directly in front of her. The position was intimidating, designed to make her feel small. "But I need to know. Have you told anyone about what you've seen here? About Matt's condition? About our routines?" "No, of course not." Paloma's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I would never betray your trust, because someone's been asking questions." Stefano's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "About my household, about my son, about you." The blood drained from Paloma's face. What kind of questions? The kind that could get people killed. Before Paloma could respond, the study door burst open. Matt stood in the doorway, his school clothes wrinkled, his dark eyes wide with fear. "Papa, why are you yelling at Paloma?" he demanded, his young voice shaking with emotion. "Matt, go to your room," Stefano said firmly. "No." Matt stepped into the study, his small hands clenched into fists. "Paloma is good. She helps me sleep. She sings to me. Don't be mean to her." The sight of this 8-year-old boy defending her made Paloma's heart clench. She stood slowly, moving toward Matt. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said gently. "Papa, Stefano and I are just talking." But he looks angry, like the bad men in my dreams. The words hit Stefano like a physical blow. Paloma saw him flinch, saw the pain flash across his features, before he carefully schooled his expression. "I'm not angry at Paloma," Stefano said, his voice softer now. "I'm just worried about keeping our family safe." "Paloma is family," Matt said, with the absolute certainty that only children possess. "She takes care of us." Stefano's gaze met Paloma's over Matt's head, and she saw something shift in his expression, a recognition, perhaps, of how deeply she'd become woven into their lives. "You're right," he said quietly. "She does take care of us." That night, the nightmare was worse than any before. Matt's screams echoed through the mansion, with such intensity that Paloma didn't bother with her robe. She ran across the garden in her pajamas, her bare feet slipping on the dew-wet grass. She found Stefano in Matt's room, holding his son while the boy thrashed and cried. But this time was different. This time, Matt was speaking, reliving the night his parents died in vivid, heartbreaking detail. "The man had a scar," Matt sobbed, "right here." He touched his cheek. "He said Papa owed him money. Mama tried to hide me. But they found us anyway. There was so much blood, Papa, so much blood." Stefano's face had gone white. "Matt, listen to me. You're safe now. That man can't hurt you anymore." "But what if he comes here? What if he hurts you too? What if he hurts Paloma and Vicky?" The inclusion of her and her daughter in Matt's fears made Paloma's chest tight with emotion. This child had claimed them as family, had made them part of his world to protect. "I'm right here, mijo," she said, settling on the bed beside them. "And I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" Matt's voice was small, broken. "I promise." As she began to sing, the same Spanish lullaby that had become their ritual, Paloma felt Stefano's eyes on her. When she glanced up, the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. There was something raw there, something vulnerable that he usually kept hidden behind his dangerous exterior. When Matt finally fell asleep, Stefano carefully tucked him in and followed Paloma into the hallway. They stood in the dim light, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive, masculine, with hints of bergamot and cedar. "The man Matt described," Stefano said quietly. "I know who he is." Paloma's blood chilled. "Is he dead? I killed him myself 6 months ago." Stefano's voice was matter-of-fact, but she saw the weight of that violence in his eyes. "But Matt doesn't know that. He thinks the monsters are still out there." "Maybe that's for the best," Paloma said softly. "He's too young to understand that kind of justice." Stefano studied her face in the moonlight streaming through the hallway windows. "You're not afraid of me, of what I am." It wasn't a question, but Paloma answered anyway. "I'm afraid of losing this, of losing him." She gestured toward Matt's room. He's become like my own son. And you've become. Stefano stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You've become essential to us, to me. The admission hung between them, charged with possibility and danger. Paloma felt her heart racing, felt the pull of attraction she'd been fighting for weeks. But before either of them could say more, Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs. "Boss," he said urgently, "we've got movement on the perimeter. 3 cars. Heading this way." Stefano's transformation was instant. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating leader she'd glimpsed in his study earlier. "Get Paloma and the children to the safe room," he ordered. "Now." "What's happening?" Paloma asked, fear creeping into her voice. Stefano's hand cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "Someone's coming for what's mine," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "And I'll burn this city down before I let them take it." The safe room was hidden behind a false wall in the mansion's basement, accessible only through Stefano's study. As Marcus ushered Paloma, Vicky, and a sleepy, confused Matt down the narrow staircase, Paloma's mind raced with questions she couldn't ask. The room itself was surprisingly comfortable, furnished with a sofa, chairs, and even a small kitchenette, but the steel-reinforced walls and multiple security monitors made its purpose unmistakably clear. "Mummy, I'm scared," Vicky whispered, pressing close to Paloma's side. "It's okay, mi amor," Paloma murmured, though her own heart was hammering against her ribs. "We're safe here." Matt sat on the sofa, his young face pale but determined. "Papa will protect us," he said with absolute certainty. "He always protects us." Through the security monitors, Paloma could see figures moving through the mansion's gardens, dark shapes with weapons, advancing with military precision toward the house. Her blood turned to ice. "Who are they?" she asked Marcus, who was checking his own weapon with practiced efficiency. "Antonio Moretti's men," Marcus replied grimly. "Boss's oldest enemy. They've been circling for months, looking for a weakness." "And they think we're his weakness," Paloma said, understanding flooding through her. "You and the kids? Yeah, they're not wrong." The next hour passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of Marcus's radio and the distant sound of gunfire. Paloma held both children close, singing softly in Spanish to keep them calm, while her own nerves frayed with each passing minute. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. "Marcus." Stefano's voice came through the radio, rough but alive. "All clear. Bring them up." The relief that flooded through Paloma was so intense it left her dizzy. When they emerged from the safe room, Stefano was waiting in his study, his white dress shirt torn and blood-stained, his dark hair disheveled. But he was alive, whole, and the sight of him made Paloma's knees weak. "Papa!" Matt launched himself into Stefano's arms, and Paloma watched the powerful man's face crumble with emotion as he held his son. "I'm here, figlio mio," Stefano whispered. "I'm right here." Over Matt's head, his eyes found Paloma's, and the intensity there made her breath catch. There was something different in his expression, a rawness, a need that hadn't been there before. "Take the children to the guest house," he said quietly. "We need to talk." An hour later, after she'd settled both kids in bed with promises that everything was fine, Paloma returned to the mansion. She found Stefano in his study, pouring himself a glass of whiskey with hands that trembled slightly. "Drink?" he offered. "I don't usually—" "Tonight isn't usual." She accepted the glass, noting how his fingers brushed hers as he handed it over. The whiskey burned, but it steadied her nerves. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now." Stefano moved to the window, staring out at the gardens where men had tried to kill them just hours before. "Moretti's dead. His lieutenant, too. But there will be others. There always are, aren't there, in your world?" He turned to face her, and she saw the weight of his choices etched into every line of his face. "Yes, there always are. Then why do you stay in it?" The question seemed to surprise him. "It's what I am, Paloma. It's all I've ever been." "That's not true." She set down her glass and moved closer to him. "I've seen you with Matt. I've seen the man you are when you think no one's watching. That's who you really are. You don't know what I've done, The things I've had to do to build this empire. You're right, I don't know. She reached up, her fingers barely grazing the elegant tattoo on his neck. But I know who you are now. I know the man who sits beside his son's bed every night, fighting demons he can't see. I know the man who hired a single mother because she needed help, who pays her more than she's worth because he has a good heart. Stefano's hand covered hers, pressing her palm flat against his chest. You see too much. Maybe you don't see enough. The space between them seemed to shrink, charged with weeks of unspoken tension. Paloma could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell his cologne mixed with the faint scent of danger that always clung to him. I can't give you a normal life, he said, his voice rough. I can't give you safety, or certainty, or any of the things you deserve. I'm not asking for normal, she whispered. I'm asking for you. Something in Stefano's expression cracked, and suddenly his hands were in her hair, his lips crushing against hers with desperate intensity. The kiss was everything she'd imagined and more, passionate, consuming, filled with weeks of suppressed longing. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Stefano rested his forehead against hers. This is dangerous, he murmured. Being with me puts you and Vicky at risk. We're already at risk. Tonight proved that. Paloma's hands fisted in his torn shirt. At least this way we're at risk together. Before Stefano could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. What is it? Paloma asked. A message from someone claiming to have information about tonight's attack. He showed her the screen. They want to meet, alone. It's a trap. Probably. Stefano's jaw clenched. But if there's a chance someone else is pulling Moretti's strings, I need to know. Don't go. The words came out more desperate than Paloma intended. Please, we just found each other. Don't throw it away for some anonymous message. Stefano cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. I have to. If there's a bigger threat out there. If someone else is coming for Matt, for you, I can't just ignore it. Then take Marcus, take backup. The message specifically says to come alone. If I don't follow instructions, they'll what? Kill you anyway? Paloma's voice broke. Stefano, please, think about what you're risking. For a moment she thought she'd reached him. His dark eyes softened, and she saw the man beneath the Mafia boss, the man who sang Italian lullabies to his traumatized son, who made sure she had health insurance and a safe place to live. But then his phone buzzed again, and whatever vulnerability she'd glimpsed disappeared. I have to go, he said, stepping back. Marcus will stay here with you and the children. If I'm not back by dawn. Don't. Paloma's voice was sharp. Don't you dare say goodbye to me like this is the end. Stefano's smile was sad, resigned. What if it is? Then you come back and make it a beginning instead. He kissed her once more, soft and sweet, and full of promise. Then he was gone, leaving Paloma alone in his study with the taste of whiskey and regret on her lips. As she watched his car disappear into the Chicago night, one thought echoed through her mind. She'd finally found a man worth fighting for, and she might have just lost him forever. Dawn came without Stefano. Paloma sat in the mansion's kitchen, clutching a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Marcus paced nearby, his phone pressed to his ear as he barked orders to his men. Still no word, boss, he said into the phone, then paused. Yeah, I know. We're working on it. Any leads? Paloma asked when he hung up. Marcus's expression was grim. The meeting location was a setup, warehouse district completely empty, but there were signs of a struggle. Paloma's heart clenched. Blood? Some. Not enough to be fatal, but... He shrugged helplessly. Before Paloma could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. With trembling fingers, she answered. Paloma Flores? The voice was cold, professional, with a slight accent she couldn't place. Yes. I have something that belongs to you, or rather someone. The blood drained from Paloma's face. Who is this? Someone who understands the value of leverage. Your boss is alive for now, but his continued health depends on your cooperation. What do you want? Simple. Bring the boy to Millennium Park, Navy Pier entrance in 2 hours. Come alone. No security, no weapons, no tricks. The boy for your boss. I won't. You will. Because if you don't, Stefano Ricci dies slowly. And his son becomes an orphan again. Your choice, Ms. Flores. The line went dead. Marcus was already moving, grabbing his gun and radio. I heard enough. We're calling in the team, surrounding the area. No. Paloma's voice was steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. He said no security. If they see your men, Paloma, you can't seriously be considering this. It's suicide. It's Matt they want. They're using Stefano to get to him. She stood, her mind racing. But they don't know me. They don't know what I'm capable of. What are you capable of? Marcus asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Paloma thought of her childhood in Mexico City, of the things she'd had to do to survive before her mother brought her to America, of the self-defense classes she'd taken after Vicky's father left, determined never to be helpless again. More than they think. An hour later, Paloma stood in Matt's bedroom, watching him sleep peacefully for what might be the last time. Vicky was curled up beside him. They'd taken to having sleepovers when the nightmares were bad, each child comforting the other. Mommy. Vicky's sleepy voice made Paloma's heart clench. Shh, mi amor, go back to sleep. Are you going somewhere? Paloma kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. I have to help Papa Stefano, but I'll be back soon. Promise? I promise. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Navy Pier was crowded despite the early hour, tourists and locals enjoying the crisp autumn morning. Paloma walked slowly toward the designated meeting point, her eyes scanning the crowd for threats. She'd left Matt safely hidden in the mansion's panic room with Maria, and explicit instructions not to open the door for anyone but her or Stefano. She spotted them before they spotted her. 2 men in dark suits trying too hard to look casual. One was speaking into a hidden microphone, the other watching the crowd with predatory intensity. Ms. Flores. The voice came from behind her. She turned to see a tall man with silver hair and cold blue eyes. I'm Carlos Mendez. We spoke on the phone. Where is he? Safe. For now. Carlos gestured toward a black sedan parked nearby. The boy? Safe. For now. Paloma echoed his words. I want proof of life first. Carlos smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He pulled out a phone, showing her a video. Stefano was tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, his face bruised but his eyes alert and furious. Satisfied? Let me talk to him. That wasn't part of the deal. It is now. Paloma's voice carried a steel that surprised even her. Or I walk away, and you explain to your boss why you lost both the boy and your leverage. Carlos considered this, then hit a button on his phone. You have 30 seconds. Paloma? Stefano's voice was rough but strong. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Are you... Don't do this, he said urgently. Don't give them Matt. Whatever they're threatening, don't... The phone went dead. Carlos was smiling again. Touching. Now, the boy. He's not here. Carlos's smile vanished. That wasn't the agreement. The agreement was that I would come alone, I did. But I'm not stupid enough to bring a child into this. Paloma pulled out her own phone. However, I do have something you might want. She showed him the screen, a video of Matt clearly safe and unharmed, but the background was deliberately obscured. Insurance, she explained. You want the boy? Fine. But first, you release Stefano. Then we'll discuss terms. You're not in a position to negotiate. Aren't I? Paloma's voice was calm, controlled. You need Matt alive and unharmed. I'm the only one who knows where he is. Kill me and you'll never find him. Hurt Stefano and I disappear with both children. Your choice, Mr. Mendez. For a moment, Carlos looked genuinely surprised. Then his expression hardened. You're bluffing. Try me. The standoff lasted several tense seconds. Then Carlos spoke into his microphone, rapid Spanish that Paloma understood perfectly. He's telling his men to bring Stefano here, she said calmly. Smart choice. 20 minutes later, a second sedan pulled up. Stefano emerged, his hands zip-tied behind his back, but otherwise unharmed. The sight of him, alive, whole, furious, made Paloma's knees weak with relief. "Now," Carlos said. "The boy. Now, you let him go." "Not until—" The gunshot came from nowhere. Carlos crumpling to the ground with a hole in his chest. Chaos erupted as Marcus and his team materialized from the crowd, weapons drawn. In the confusion, Paloma ran to Stefano, cutting his restraints with a knife she'd hidden in her jacket. "How?" he asked, rubbing his wrists. "I called Marcus the moment I left the house, told him to give me 30 minutes, then move in." She cupped his face in her hands, checking for serious injuries. "Did you really think I'd come here without backup?" Stefano's laugh was rough, disbelieving. "You magnificent, terrifying woman." "I told you," Paloma said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. "I'm not asking for normal, I'm asking for you." When they broke apart, Stefano's eyes were bright with something that looked like wonder. "I love you," he said simply. "I'm probably going to get you killed, and I love you anyway." "I love you too," she replied, "and I'm definitely going to get you killed, so we're even." As Marcus's team secured the scene and the last of Mendez's men were taken into custody, Stefano pulled Paloma close. "I'm right here," he whispered, echoing the words that had started it all. "And I'm never letting you go," she whispered back. Years later, Paloma would wake before dawn and find Stefano already awake beside her, watching her sleep with the same wonder he'd shown that first night when she'd chased away Matt's nightmares. The mansion had changed. Where once there had been cold marble and intimidating grandeur, now there were family photos and children's artwork on the refrigerator. Matt's nightmares had faded to occasional bad dreams, easily soothed by the knowledge that his family was safe and whole. He was 15 now, fluent in Spanish and Italian, protective of his little sister Vicky, and fiercely loyal to the woman who had become his mother in every way that mattered. Vicky, at 14, was brilliant and fearless, already talking about following in Paloma's footsteps and becoming a social worker. Stefano had gradually moved away from the darker aspects of his business, focusing on legitimate enterprises while maintaining just enough of his reputation to keep potential threats at bay. He was still dangerous, would always be dangerous, but now that danger was tempered by love, by the knowledge that he had something precious to protect. "What are you thinking about?" Paloma asked one morning, finding him standing at their bedroom window, watching Matt and Vicky play with their new puppy in the garden. "How you saved us all," he said simply, pulling her into his arms. "How you whispered, 'I'm right here,' and made it true." "We saved each other," she corrected, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him. And in the golden morning light, surrounded by the laughter of their children, it was impossible to argue with that truth. What an incredible journey of love, courage, and family. Paloma's whispered words became the foundation of an unbreakable bond here at Passion and Power. Did this story touch your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional tales that prove love can conquer even the darkest circumstances. Your support helps us bring these powerful stories to life.